All right, what's going on? How you guys doing today? It's Alejandro again from Urban Athlete Fitness Studio, and I want to chat with you guys about continuing on with the upper body routine, or at least talking specifically about the upper body. In this case now, we're focusing on the posterior chain or our upper back. And so essentially that just entails the movement of the shoulder blades, even working our deltoids to a degree, along with other muscles within the rotator cuff. I'd say with working your back, you're going to specifically hit your trapezius, your rhomboids, your lats, teres minor, a bunch of other muscles within the rotator cuff, and even your rectus spinae, just like right down here. Now, there's lots of ways to go about it, and a lot of it revolves around rowing movements, so just pulling in general. So if you want a good detailed explanation on a movement like the seated row, right? Actually, we have a video on the channel, so you can go check that out. But something I want to point out just real quick here, just want to show you with the band that I have, right? Is that when we're rowing, is essentially not pinning the shoulder blade down the whole time. We actually want movement of the scapula. And something I like about the one-arm version of this, which I will show you with the cable system here, is that you can really heighten that, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna stabilize my body here, kind of think of an athletic stance, spread out my feet a bit, tighten up the core, and then I'm gonna lock the shoulder blade almost in place, right? I'm gonna set the shoulder blades down, chest is open, and then when I pull, right, I get up to about this point, but the movement is going to be mostly through the shoulder blade itself. And when I go back, I want to let it relax, protract, and then pull back in again. Right. You can also see from behind that my arm position, right, I'm not getting all the way in tight like this, right? I can have a little bit of distance here. And I would actually say that this is going to come down to what you're trying to focus on, or if, say, for example, when you're pulling, and if you already have a bit of this posture issue, let's say you're in this position, first things first, the row is an excellent way to help mitigate that. But when you're here, right, chances are a lot of these muscles here, like the lats, your pecs, even the anterior deltoid, they're going to be really tight. And so you're actually not going to benefit that much from pulling in this position, because all you're doing is lighting up those lats. So this is going to further enhance that posture position. So really you want to think wider and focus more on opening up the chest and squeezing through the upper back. So with some rowing versions, you may need to adjust the arms a bit to minimize the lat activation. But with that being said, it's still helpful you can work that in to help stabilize the shoulder blades while you're rowing. Yeah, anyway, without further ado, we're gonna actually do some back exercises. I'll show you a few of them and we'll go from there. Alrighty, so we're looking for a warming up of the shoulder blades here. So elevation and depression, hanging like so. Doesn't need to be hanging, you can do it standing. You can have the arms up above. You can use a bar, you can use anything like that. The post here I like to do mostly because I like to work on my hip flexion at the same time. I'm also trying to keep the spine extended, so it ends up being like an abdominal warm-up along with the separation or the retraction to protraction shoulder blades. But doing push-up plushes on the floor in a plank position, maybe on the bench as well, on knees, using a TRX. The goal is the same in that we want to just make sure those shoulder blades are warmed up effectively. We can move them about because that's what we want when we're rowing. Now with the bench supported row, the arm you want to focus on the most, well, clearly it's going to be the one you're rowing with, right? But the other arm we don't want to forget about either. So we want to push our body away, externally rotate that shoulder joint, lock it in place, keep it stable, keep it braced, right? In this variant here, I actually push the arm forward a little bit, so I'm looking for a stretch of the lats, but the rowing remains the same. It's all in the shoulder blades as I drive inward. Standing it's probably my favorite actually, because I get a lot of abdominal activation at the same time, right? But I'm looking for the separation, retraction, all that good stuff. The bent over row here, the barbell bent over row that is, I would consider a pretty advanced movement because it's very similar to the starting position of your deadlift. So for that reason, this actually goes very well with your deadlift in terms of teaching and building a good habit behind your starting point. So dumbbell or barbell, you want to feel a bit of a stretch of the hamstrings as you hinge over, extension through the thoracic spine, and you want to lock in those shoulder blades as you bring the shoulder blades together. But if those two are a little bit challenging, right, the the chest supported row here is a great movement because you kind of get that similar effect. You're kind of bent over a bit. You can focus on those rhomboids and those shoulder blades driving in. And now with overhead movements, pull-ups, TRX pull-ups, lat pull-downs, all of your hand positions, right, in terms of lat activation, it's your humerus closing into the torso, right? We actually have a video on the channel about lat pull down, so I would check that out. But that's like the main thing, right? So in fact, Lat activation is very similar between a lot of these movements. So you got to make that connection, right? And then you got to think of the arms closing in. So really, each of your variants here are actually going to determine what other muscles you want to fire. So whether it's biceps, your rotator cuff, your deltoids, your abdominals, etc., they're all going to do the trick. But yeah, pick the one that works for you and go with that. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed those exercises, and I hope you got something from them in terms of helping you continue to work your upper body, specifically the upper back. In terms of a rep range to work with, right, you can go from anywhere from, say, like 8 reps for high volume, focusing specifically on like hypertrophy, that perhaps you'd want to go in a higher rep range, end range anyway, like 15, even 16 reps, you can go up that high. But goal remains the same, just keep that form, keep the quality behind the movement, and if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Cheers.